Hello everyone, welcome to this talk. Today my presentation is titled Minimizing Age of Information in a Multi-Hop Wireless Network. This was part of my PhD work at IISc with Professor Vinod Sharma. So basically, what is age of information and why is it of such great interest? So suppose you have some source which is sending information to some destination somewhere, and that the source and destination are separated by a network, and the information that the source is generating has to pass through this network before reaching the destination. And let's say the source generates a packet of information at time t naught and starts transmitting across multiple hops. Then at some time t later on, the packet is somewhere in the middle of the network, and we say that the age of the packet is t minus t naught, because t is the current time and t naught is the time the packet was created or generated. This is of course the very natural definition of age, and like this you can define the age of a packet as a function of time. Why is this age very important? Because this is a concept that came to be somewhere around 2012 or 13. So we see that age somehow captures a notion of what is called freshness of the information. And when people talk about things such as timely updates in the context of IoT and so on, age seemed to be an appropriate metric to understand these interactions. So for example, if you have a source which is observing some kind of a natural phenomenon, and you want to know the most recent information about it, then you would be looking at the youngest. So I'm using young in the usual sense. So you look at the youngest, the most recently generated packet, which is also the packet that has the least age. So often understanding this metric has a lot of value in a number of applications where the most recent information is the most relevant one. So that's why one talks about timely updates and so on. So I was saying that for a single packet, if you plot the age against the time, so from the time that it is generated, which is t0, the age increases linearly because the age is just this function, the slope is 1. This is for a single packet. Now, if you consider a node in a network which sees a number of packets, you call the age at a node, you define it as the age of the youngest packet that it has seen, which means that a node would have seen a number of packets corresponding to a particular flow of packets, and the most recent information, the age of the most recent or the youngest packet is assumed to be the age at a node, the age function. To illustrate this, consider a simple example. Supposing you have a source which is generating packets. So the first packet is generated at time t1, second packet at time t2, and third packet at time t3. So it's sending these packets to a destination. Now, how does age evolve at the source node? Since you can see here that age, the gray lines that you see here, the dotted lines, are the age graphs of these 3 packets that were generated at the source. So the first one follows this t minus t1 trajectory, the second is t minus t2, the third is t minus t3, and so on. Now, when the first packet has been generated, the youngest packet at the source is obviously the first packet. So it follows the trajectory of the age of the first packet, which is shown by this blue line. Now, the moment the second packet is generated at the source, it starts following the trajectory of the second packet, because that second packet is the youngest packet in the network. And soon it travels in that line and reaches the time point where the third packet has been generated. At this point, it switches to the timeline, the age line of the third packet, and you have this kind of an evolution. So overall, once you have these three packets which are generated at time t1, t2, and t3, the age evolution at this source follows this jigsaw or sawtooth kind of pattern from t1 to t2 to t3. And you can note that since this has unit slope, the base of the triangle is equal to the height. So you get this nice sawtooth pattern. This is, of course, at the source. And also at the source, you can note that the base of the triangle only depends on the time between two arrivals, which is also called the, or time between the generation of two packets. So you can call it, the time, well, you can call it an inter-arrival time, or intergeneration time. The time between generating two packets is what determines the shape of this triangle and also the evolution of this pattern at the source. Now consider the same thing at the destination. The destination is somewhere else, and let's assume that the packets reach there in the order that they were created at times S1, S2, and S3. So the packets that were generated at T1, T2, T3 now reach the destination at times S1, S2, S3. Of course, the packets may well arrive out of order, but for simplicity, let's just assume this to illustrate the evolution. So the blue line shows the evolution of age at the source, and at the destination, the packets arrive at times S1, S2, and S3, as I've said. Recall that the age lines of the packets were like this. Now, at time S1 at the destination, the first packet arrives. So from this moment onwards, the age at this destination tracks the age of this packet till the time the second packet arrives, which is at S2, at which the age now becomes the age of the youngest packet, again, which is S2, and it travels in that trajectory till the third packet arrives, which is the, at time S3. And so the age at the destination node has this, again, the same seesaw pattern, but it's above the previous graph. So if you put the two graphs together, the blue graph being the evolution of age at the source node and the red one showing the evolution at the destination, you'll see that there's a racing of the graphs. The second one is above the first because it arrives a little later. And this of course is because the nodes are in a line. So you would expect the age to be greater further down the transmission path. So this is the basic evolution of age at the source and a destination node, which are separated by a number of hops. So the time between S1 and the packet that is generated at time T1 arrives at time S1. The one generated at T2 arrives at time S2. The one generated at time T2, T3 arrives at time S3. So these are the delays that the packet faces in the network. So age is not delay itself, but it also depends on the delay that the packet faces in the network. So that's what I've drawn here. So if you look at this line, this block red line, this is actually of length d, where d is S2 minus T2, the delay of the second packet. Whereas this height is actually the time T2 minus T1. So if you're considering this curve, this red curve, it's kind of shifted away from the blue curve by this delay distance in some sense. It's like it's pushed in that direction. So what we just saw, that the age evolution follows this kind of a seesaw pattern. So age as a function, let's denote it by a of t. And let's say it follows this blue path. So to kind of control this, you need to get some kind of a metric out of this age function. And One metric that people commonly use is average age. So what you do is you consider the age under the age curve, the area under the age curve. So this is the blue shaded region. So let's call it A of t. A of t is the area under the age curve till time t, and then you divide by t and then take t very large. So that gives you a sense of average area under the curve. This is called average age of a system. So basically, as I said, average age is the value as t becomes very large of the area under the age curve divided by time, normalized by time. Now, at the source node, we saw that this age curve is made up of these triangles whose base and height are both equal to tau, tau being the time between two arrivals or two packet generations. And if you assume that these taus are all IID, then this limit actually is just this, it's the expected value of tau squared by twice the expected value of tau, because this expected value of tau squared by 2 is actually the area of this triangle, and the expected value of tau is the length. So something like a, I mean, you can take the strong law and get this result. So this is, of course, at the source node. However, at the destination node, the story is somewhat different, because the area doesn't just depend on the blue curve. So the blue curve is coming somewhat here in these gray lines. But additionally, you have these parallelograms, and these parallelograms again have side tau and another side d. So they have an area tau d. So in addition to that first term that we saw there, which is expected value of tau square plus 2 expected value of tau, you also get something like expected value tau d by expected value of tau. Okay, it depends. And then if you can somehow factorize this expectation, you will see that there's an additional term caused by the delay itself. So age at a faraway point depends on delay, and delay as it is not very easy to handle, like across multiple hops. So if you have a single hop, maybe, but even there it's not very clear. In a multiple hop network, it's not very clear how to handle this delay or how to minimize age. So the question is, if I were to have a multi-hop network, I'll say what that is a little, but you can imagine that there are multiple hops. And how do you minimize age in a multiple hop network? So there's been a lot of work in age. Mostly this has been in the single hop regime, where you have a source and a destination, one hop apart, which is like saying that there is only one queue between the source and destination. So the earlier works, a lot of the early works focused on single hop networks with a single queue. Even there, modeling was not very well. There were a lot of results. For example, this first paper by Call, Yates, and Grutzer, where they consider the single hop model, and they model the single hop as an MM1 queue and obtain the average age. And then later they model it as an MD1 queue and a DM1 queue and so on. So in some of these models, getting the results is easy. Some of them it's not so easy, so you have to go for approximations. Second work also is along the same lines, but Yates and Call. I think there they also consider the effect of service discipline, like whether to serve the first, last come first serve, first come last serve, first come first serve, and so on. The third work, again in the context of single hop, Kadota, Sinha, and Modiano, what they do is they establish some kind of performance bounds on age, like they compare multiple algorithms and kind of give results on order optimality, which means that they say that, okay, if you use this algorithm, you will get k times the optimal age, and we're talking of minimum age. So they say that they show that there are particular algorithms which will give you an age which is twice the minimum age that you want, and there's some other algorithm that is 4 times, and so on. So those are the kind of bounds. In multi-hop, since there's been some work, but well, these are two works. First is Bidui, Sun, and Shroff, where they show that if you have a large multi-hop network, with a single flow passing through it. If you do last come first served queuing, so basically which says that the packet which comes last will be served first, which is one way of pushing the youngest packet into the front. So they say that if you do that, that kind of does better than all other service disciplines. The second work, Talak, Karaman, Modiano, is one which talks about age for a multi-hop network, and they want to minimize this age, but they apply their attention to a subset of policies which are called stationary policies. The stationary policy basically means that links being on and off, they decide that it's so a link L is on with probability PL, and once you have such probabilities for all the nodes in the network, you can write an expression for the age, and then you can try to optimize the age in terms of these probabilities. But these are not exactly state dependent, so we'll be comparing our results with this work. At least we perform better than their algorithm. So in our case, our contribution in this work is that one, we are talking of a more general setting. So a general network, and we're trying to see what can be done. And we propose an algorithm which uses packet dropping and kind of a greedy optimization to get good age performance. And we compare it with existing schemes, and we also compare it with a lower bound, a theoretical lower bound, so that we can see how good we're performing. And what we see is that we do perform better than a lot of existing schemes in the literature. We also have a scheme for age tracking, which means that we look at, we try to provide targeted age for systems. So to give a kind of a simple example of a multi-hop network, before I just give the notation, so a simple example would be a network with two links, let's say L1 and L2, which evolves, let's say, in discrete time. And each link has a channel gain, which evolves IID in time. So the channel gain of the first, if you call H1 of t, channel gain of the second, if you call H2 of t, the overall channel state is H of t. This evolves IID. There are multiple flows in the network. Let's say there's flow F1, which goes from node 1 to node 2, and F2, which goes from node 1 to node 3 via node 2. And further, the network will also have what are called interference constraints, which determine how the links can be active together. So often it turns out that because of wireless issues, you say that, okay, the graph has a certain, you talk of interference graphs. So you say that not all links can be active together, and you say that, so for example, the green link is L1, either you can have L1 active or you can have L2 active. So we say that the possible activations of the set are either the link L1 or L2. Because in a large complex network, the link activation functions can be much more complex, but in this simple example, it can be like this. So at every time, only one of the links can be active. So the network controller has to actually decide which of the links is to be active at every time. And that is not the only decision it has to make. At each time, the controller must pick one of the two links. And then once it decides on a link, it must decide which flow is to be sent on that link. Now recall that there are two flows. The first flow went through first and second flow both went through L1. But L2 had only the second flow. So if the controller chooses L1 as a transmission link in a particular time, then it will also have to determine which of the two flows has to be sent on it. So this is the optimization problem that the network controller is facing. And the question is, how can the controller pick one of these two links and which flow is to be sent over that link? And what is our target? We want to kind of minimize age. So the control problem is basically this, and your metrics can vary depending on your problem. So as I was saying, in general, you can have a much larger, more complex network. which has some flows, let's say F1 to Fk, which are finite number of flows. And the control decision, we will denote it by this letter S, which is SLFT. And S sub L super F is 1 if flow F is to be sent over link at time t. So this is basically the scheduling and routing decision that we're making. We are assuming, of course, that the flows have fixed paths, but there will be paths where flows intersect. There will be links where flows intersect, so you need to have such a variable. So SL, L being the link, F being the flow T, indicates whether a flow is to be sent over a link. And if you denote the vector of all these SLFs as S of T, S of T would come from some state S, and this set S is determined by the interference constraints of the network. What that means is that in a network, you will have a number of constraints. For example, when a link is on, you might have a constraint that only one flow can be sent at a time. You cannot send multiple flows. And that's also another constraint that goes into building this set S, not just the wireless interference constraint, but practical constraints of sending. So all those constraints together form this set S, and our ST, our optimization variable, is drawn from this. Of course, SLT, each of the elements of this ST vector can either be 0 or 1. And then you also have HT, which is the vector of channel gains. So you don't have one channel, you have the whole system of channel gains in the network, which is evolving. And once you have a channel gain, what you also have associated with the channel gain is something called a rate vector. Again, we don't assume a specific structure, we just assume that it's defined and it's there. So once you have this set of link activation or schedules, which are called S, and then once you have the rate, once you have the channel gain H, together they define what's called the rate of the system. For example, this rate, of course, should follow certain natural requirements that you have. Like if this, for example, you would require that the rate should be increasing in H, and you would require that if S is 0, then rate should be 0, and so on. You can define it in many ways, but it's just there. What the rate vector does, it assigns rates to each link and flow. So mu LF denotes the rate which you give over link F to flow F. And if I denote this capital QIF as the queue length of packets of flow F in node I, then I define this small q where L is a link. So QLF is QIF because the link L is from I to J. So I take the, it's a directed link from I to J. So at I, which is the source for that link, I take the queue length of that and I define it to be the queue length of the link. This is done, this is just a notation I'm setting up for the optimization that we do. So what we say is that our control policy basically is just very simple. You drop all packets except the latest packet. You just keep the latest packet at each queue, and you solve this optimization. And what is this optimization? You multiply this queue length that I defined below, which is like the source queue length at a link, with the rate, and then you also give a weight to this whole thing, which is dependent on the flow. And this global metric is added up across links and flows, and you maximize this overall possible such possibilities. Now, the variable S is implicitly contained in the rate mu, so I've not specifically written there, but mu is a function of S. That's how it comes across. Now, you might ask, why are we dropping all the packets? It's not always the best thing to do, and not all applications would allow that. But there will be applications where you can drop a certain amount of the packets without much loss. And indeed, if you just want to look at the age alone of the system, then dropping all packets seems to be the way to go, at least. Of course, you will not have age alone, you'll have something else along with it. So this might not always be the solution. But if you have a situation where you can drop packets, you should drop packets. That's our idea. Each queue keeps only the latest packet of a flow, and you do this optimization. And this weight function that we're giving is kind of a feedback, because you give a higher weight to flows which are not meeting age requirements. So if the age of a flow, by age of a flow we mean age at the destination of the flow, at the end, the very end. If that is in excess of alpha, you give a weight of 1 plus beta, where beta is a positive quantity to this flow in this optimization. Otherwise, you don't. So it's like a step function which gives higher weight to flows which are kind of stepping out and not meeting their optimization requirements. The requirement is that they should be below this alpha. So alpha for each flow, okay, it should be alpha F because it's flow specific, not alpha for all flows. If you have a flow which has a deadline alpha, then you give it a weight which is proportional to whether it's breaking the requirement or not. So if you want age to be less than 10, and if you see that at the end the age is let's say 20, then you say, okay, the natural thing is to give more weight to this flow in the optimization so that it gets selected more frequently. Because with our queue assumption, where we assume that each queue keeps only the latest packet, the queue length will either be 0 or 1. So this optimization kind of simplifies somewhat. The queues are no longer large numbers, and you do this. So some things about the optimization. One is that we use a certain kind of feedback, which is a feedback from the end, at the end of the path. So when you're talking of end-to-end age, let's say, then you're taking the age at the end and the destination and using it to control the evolution of the system. Because this information has to be available, so I'll not discuss how that can be done, but possibly one can think about some means of information exchange whereby this information is made available. What this queue length information actually means in our context is QLF means, what does it mean? QLF can be 0 or 1. If QLF is 1, that means in a link L, at the backside of the link, a packet is available. Now, because it's a link and we're talking about a single flow, it means that the packet at the back of the link has age which is less than the age of the node at the front of the link. So the node at the back of the link has age which is less than the node at the front of the link. And therefore it has received an update basically. So this just implies that an update is available. So what we're doing in some sense is kind of maximizing the number of updates in the system and hoping that it works. Good thing is that due to packet dropping rule, system is always stable. Now, if you go into schemes which do not drop packets, you will obviously have to contend with queuing delay, and as the system comes closer to capacity, queuing delay goes to infinity, which is very bad news for the age. However, if you just throw away those packets, you don't have a problem. And something about the optimization and how to solve it. If the set S of your possible variables is small, you can do exhaustive search. If it's large, you can kind of come up with some linear relaxation. Again, I'm not giving details here, but these are available in our paper. So what you do is the S variables are integer valued, so you take a relaxation and you allow them to take real values. Instead of taking values 0 and 1, you allow them to take values between 0 and 1, and you find a relaxed solution. Of course, that will cost a certain amount of the optimality, but that's one way to go about solving this kind of problem. And we'll see that in terms of age performance, it does better than a number of existing policies. And one of the works that I had shown in multi-hop was a work by Bidui, Sun, and Shroff, which was talking about LCFS policies being very good. But now that we are dropping packets, we see that, of course, you can outperform LCFS policies as well. So just to give a sense of how well we're performing, and we want to compare with other schemes, we'll consider a network for simulation. So we consider a 11-node network. There are 11 nodes with 5 flows. The flows are marked in different colors. So the first flow, one flow is from 8 to 2 to 3 to 9 to 10, which is the red one. There's a yellow one from 11 to 6 to 2, There's a green one from 11 to 6 to 9. There's another green one, a darker green, from 1 to 2 to 3 to 4 to 5. And a blue one from 6 to 2 to 3 to 4 to 7. I think those are the flows. So these are the 5 flows. And for this study, what we do is we say the packet arrivals is modeled as follows. In each slot at a source node, packet arrives with probability P, which is called the arrival rate of the packet. The channel, of course, is assumed to take value 0, 0 or 1 with probability 0.5. Now you can obtain a lower path on an average age or on a path of n links. This is the lower bound that you can obtain. How you obtain this lower bound is basically by using something similar to the graphical argument that we had used earlier. So if you recollect the picture that we had earlier of age evolution at a source and destination, the blue curve and the red curve, then this first term corresponds to the area under the blue curve, and this is the additional term that comes from the red curve. This kind of becomes a lower bound, and this is actually proportional to the delay of each hop. This is a loose bound because this is calculated by assuming that you have n links which have exactly one flow and which can schedule any time that they want. So there's no interference constraint and there's no limitation. So whichever, if there's a flow which is flowing through this path, it can be scheduled whenever it wants when a packet is available. And under this assumption, you can get this bound. There's a lower bound on the edge. So since this bound assumes that you have exactly one flow, this is a loose bound and your actual performance may be above this bound. So we might not even meet this bound in reality. And we compare with a number of algorithms. These are standard in the literature. First is the traditional Max-Weight algorithm, where we use max weight or back pressure, which is obviously expected not to perform very well. We also compare with Max-Weight drop, which is the same Max-Weight algorithm, except that we drop all the older packets. We compare with Max-Weight LCFS, which is Max-Weight algorithm with, instead of first come first served, last come first served. And lastly, we also consider the stationary policy from Tullock et al., which I had mentioned, where links are activated with a fixed probability, which is obtained by solving an optimization. So we want to see how our policy kind of fares in comparison. So obviously, some of these policies drop packets, some of these won't drop packets. So I'll just compare the age of one of the flows. So this is in the network that I had shown, there was a flow from 1 to 5. Let's compare the age that you obtain from our policy with all these other policies. So the stationary policy obtains a very high age, and max weight actually does even slightly better than that. And I think the arrival rate here is 0.1. Max weight with LCFS does even better than max weight, and max weight with dropping does even better than max weight LCFS. And our policy, of course, does better than all of them, and it's the closest to the lower bound. Even though we do have multiple flows on links and so on, it comes reasonably close to the lower bound. This is just one flow in the network. Similarly, if you consider another flow, which is this flow from 11 to 9, and again, you see that the same pattern is repeated. The order of policies remains the same, and we do come closer to the lower bound than max-weight drop as well. So overall, dropping these two policies are the ones which drop packets and which get some gain, whereas without dropping, you might pay a penalty. And this is, of course, at a low arrival rate. Now, once you increase arrival rates, you'll see that policies which do not perform dropping actually fare worse. So this is what we have here. We track the performance, the average age of one flow for different policies as you vary the arrival rate, and this is somewhere 3 points in this region. So around 1.13, 0.14, you see that this graph, which corresponds to max weight LCFS, kind of blows up. And I've not given the actual max weight because that will be even larger than max weight LCFS. So all packets policies which are queuing kind of blow up. The stationary policy remains kind of stationary. Why this is so, it doesn't vary so much with lambda, because lambda is also part of the optimization calculation. But otherwise, the difference is huge, even though it doesn't really vary with arrival rate. Whereas the dropping policies, which are basically max weight drop and our policy, perform well and are close to the stationary policy. Another feature that we have is that if you look at this last line, which is this is the lower bound, the red line is our policy. The slope of our policy is actually, of this line, the slope is actually negative. So the line is, it's a decreasing line. Whereas even for max weight drop, the slope is slightly positive. So age decreases as you increase arrival rate because you're doing more and more updates by throwing in the packet. But then you also get a small benefit by the additional benefit by doing a better optimization than max weight drop, which is the benefit that our policy has. Additionally, we had also in the optimization, if you recall, we had an alpha term, which was like a target age that you could fix so that you meet the target, basically. So you were fixing target ages and you were trying this guy to meet the target. So how does that system work? How does the feedback weight system work? So this is a plot of how, when you fix a target, how the age varies. On the x-axis, I have the target age. On the y-axis, I have the average age of that particular. There's a flow from 1 to 5 again. So this dotted line is the x equal to y line. So if a point is on this side, on the left side of that line, it means that the age you're getting is larger than your target. If it's on the right side, what it means is that the age you're getting is lower than the target. So what we see is that by using this targeted method, you can keep your age lower than the target. It's not a bad thing, though it's not tracking along this line. So maybe it can be made better. But as it is, it kind of gives you what you want. So you want the age to be smaller than something, it keeps the age smaller than something. So here I'm saying target is 24 and it's giving you age smaller than 24, which means that age is smaller than what I want to be, which is a good thing. So this is there. Of course, it really pushes down, I think, because we are like overcompensating there. The W, the weight function that we had was a step function which swings between, one small value and one large value. Instead of that, if you were to have maybe a smoother kind of function, probably this tracking would be a little smoother. But since this works and it serves our purpose, we kind of stick to this. So this is a summary of our results. So what we had was a policy which outperforms many well-known policies. It comes close to a theoretical lower bound, which was a loose bound, as we had seen. And it reduces age over LCFS and has many benefits over that discipline, in the sense of, whereas in LCFS, you end up having to transmit all the packets which are backlogged. Here you don't have to. So which means that dropping packets actually helps. And the it might not be possible that you can, in an application, you may not be able to drop all the packets, but definitely dropping packets really helps you move in age. And of course, the optimization that we do is also kind of greedily maximizing the number of updates. That helps. So of course, it's not clear what the actual optimal policy is, but we're coming close enough, so that's good. And we can also provide some kind of targeted age. We don't track it perfectly, but we do well in the sense that we give less than what's the maximum limit. So what would be possible future directions would be, one could think of improving the bounds, though I think that is not very easy. Proving optimality and showing some kind of optimality properties for this thing. And then I also talked about the linear approximation that we used, which could lead to a certain loss in optimality, and what effect it has on age, for example, could be studied. So that's all. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Ashok. So perhaps if someone has questions, you can ask now.
I have a small question. Hi Ashok, thanks for the talk. So this algorithm is centralized, right? So, but if you want to implement it, I guess you have to have a distributed algorithm. So could this be distributed?
Yeah, thanks for that question. So we do, well, this is, as you saw, there was a centralized optimization that we were solving. So one way you can do it is, we do actually talk about a distributed solution in our paper. So what you do is you kind of partially solve it at different nodes and come up with some kind of consensus answer by adding together or averaging values. That kind of optimization is there and it is possible, though it will take a certain cost in the number of steps that you can do in a distributed way. It can be done, and there will be a loss also because of that, but you can split it up. Of course, in the form that we have given it, it cannot be split up. If you do the linear relaxation, it becomes separable and then you can move it around. But if you want to do the integer program itself, then it is hard, I think. But a relaxation can definitely be done in a distributed fashion.
Okay, so but the consensus, is it also operating on the same network, or do they have a network, a more reliable network than the one that they are actually controlling?
Yeah, then that problem comes in, right? How do you come to that? Yeah, you'll have to do it. If you're doing on the same network, then yeah, that, so practically that remains an issue, I think. If you have a more reliable thing to do these things, okay, some sub channel that you can use for this. But yeah, in general, you might, yeah, that depends on what your resources are. So
Okay, yeah, thanks.
Okay, if there are no more questions, then let's thank Ashok for the talk. Thank you, Ashok. So the next week we won't have a